Hello and welcome to the Formula Botanica Green Beauty Conversations podcast. My name's Gemma, I'm the business manager at Formula Botanica and also your host. If you want to find out a little bit more about Formula Botanica, who we are and what we do, head over to formulabotanica.com and check out our free sample class. In this episode, I'm interviewing Sebastian Parsons from Live and the Live School to find out all about biodynamic farming and the principles of running an ethical business. I hope you enjoy. So hello and welcome to the podcast, Sebastian.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining us. I know we've been chatting for a while. Myself, you, Elizabeth, who also works with you at Live School. And we'll be finding out more about the Live School throughout this podcast. And obviously you can find details on the Live School in the notes accompanying this podcast. But Sebastian, first of all, for the benefit of our listeners, could you just introduce who you are, what you do, what your background is?
Hello. Yes, I'm Sebastian Parsons and I'm a social entrepreneur and a designer. I currently run Live, which is selling natural skincare products and running professional training for therapists in skincare. And we have a retreat centre in Worcestershire and a training school. And I am doing quite a lot of carpentry at the moment. So a varied background and I do different things, but always around something natural and around human beings.
Okay, cool. So I know that you used to work with Dr Haushka and now you're working with a brand called Martina Gebhardt. But I'd wondered if we could just have a little chat about what is the secret that connects Dr Haushka, Weleda and Martina Gebhardt?
Yes, of course. I think the secret that connects them is biodynamic growing. So these three organizations all work with biodynamic ingredients. And biodynamics is first and foremost a question of consciousness. What's at the bottom of your heart? What's your deepest desire? So if you want to grow the best ingredients, then biodynamics is a good way to go. If you want to maximize profit rather than make sustainable profit, then biodynamics may be the wrong path. In your life, if your purpose is the task that you're doing rather than your sort of narrow betterment, then biodynamics is a good route to go if you are making skincare products. Biodynamics is about caring for the land, the microorganisms, the soil, the soul, the place, nature, the rhythms of life. It is scientific, but it includes how things feel. Biodynamics is caring, simply put, improves the quality. So when biodynamics is chosen, it reflects a commitment to quality. It reflects a desire to produce the best. And the second thing about biodynamics is that it's all about life. Life is something we do take for granted. It is incredibly strong and constant, but it can be squeezed out. It's not eternal. Life comes and goes. We are all alive, and our bodies are natural systems. But they're complex and they're subtle, and although they are robust, they're also vulnerable. And science is showing more and more just how subtle and complex, for instance, the gut biome is. Only just starting to understand incredibly diverse ways in which our digestive systems respond, even like within families, completely different digestive systems. So maybe biodynamics, it's not something that you notice straight away, but when you open a bottle of a biodynamic brand, then for me, I get a feeling of vitality, sort of like coming out of the bottle, out of the scent, I suppose. It sort of jumps out at me. This product is alive. I think basically, whatever the effect of the ingredients, so, whatever that particular ingredient is good for, if it's been grown and produced biodynamically, then that effect is going to be amplified.
So I know that you mentioned about caring, and you said that you thought another thing that connected Hauschka, Weleda and Martina Gebhardt was a philosophy of caring.
Yeah, it is about caring. So what is life? I mean, this is a really, really big question, and it's at the heart of biodynamics. And there's a spark in life which we want to care for and we want to nurture, as the ingredients are grown in the fields, as we produce the products, as we go to market with them.
Yeah. So just talking a bit more about biodynamics, which is obviously the theme, one of the themes of this podcast, is how did you discover biodynamics? How did you get involved in that?
it was there waiting for me, really. I was interested, curious child, and always asking questions. And I was very lucky that my family, my grandfather owned a farm, and I had many wonderful memories as a child of visiting the farm. Now, my mum is the eldest of 4 children. She's the only daughter. My grandfather had 3 sons after her, and the youngest son was very interested in biodynamics. And he had a field outside his home, which was part of the main farm, but this was a field that he was using. And I was intrigued to look at this field because it was 2 colours. So it was growing wheat, and half was one colour of green, and the other half was a darker, richer colour. And my uncle came up to me. I was leaning on the fence looking at this field, and he said, "Why do you think they're different colours?" And I said, "Really, I suppose, well, you must have planted one half at a different time from the other." And he said, "Yes, but which did I plant first?" And I said, "Well, I suppose the dark green half, which looks much healthier and stronger, I suppose you planted that first." And he said, "Well, you might think that, but it's actually the reverse. I planted the dark green, healthy, vibrant half several weeks after the other half. I was halfway through the field and it started to rain. And then I didn't get back out to finish the job for ages. And so I decided when I did finish it that I had to do it on the right day. And so I planted it on the right day, and it's grown faster and grown stronger than the first half of the field." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "That's biodynamics. That's the system that we use at Broome Farm," which is the name of the farm where my grandfather farmed. Broome Farm was one of the first biodynamic farms in the UK. There was 2 that were launched in the 30s, and it was a beacon farm for the biodynamic community. And although I didn't know anything about that, I was sort of like in this environment. And that was the first conversation where I really began to find out about it when I was, 12 or something like that. Anyway, my grandfather's farm was sold, and that was because the family couldn't agree about the future for it. My sisters and I, actually, we used the success of our work with Dr. Haushka to buy a new farm. We would have probably bought Broome Farm if we could, but it wasn't available. We bought another farm called Rush Farm in 2005, and there's a story behind that, and it's led to something called Stockwood Community Benefit Society. So the Stockwood Community Benefit Society protects Broome Rush Farm so that it can't be sold like Broome Farm was. Because when you're caring for the land biodynamically, you actually don't want that place to be lost to another approach. So we've actually put that farm, Rush Farm, into a trust. Now, as a result of my journey, I have at different times been chair of the Biodynamic Association and director of the Biodynamic Land Trust. But my interest is in the sort of bigger picture. My family are farmers, but I haven't actually farmed. I'm more of a gardener myself. And of course, biodynamics comes into my skincare journey too, because I have very, very sensitive and sore skin. And when I started working with Hauschka, of course, I knew something of its background. It made sense to me. I loved, the complexity of the formulation. So compared to cooking, skincare is rather different. We're still using the ingredients. Quite often we're using the same ingredients, but in skincare, you're doing something really extraordinary that you don't do in cooking. You're creating something that will be preserved at room temperature for a long period of time. And this is the thing where the processing and the biodynamic processing sort of like kicks in. You've got to take these natural ingredients, you've got to balance them so that they sit well with each other and protect each other, the ingredients in the product. But also you want something in the pot that's vital out of the field, that's strong and vibrant as it goes into the bottle. So it's a real art and it's fascinating. I mean, in a certain way, you want the plant ingredients to be exalted in the product so that the product is more powerful on the skin. And the skin, of course, is a window to our soul. And rather like powerful natural products, a powerful natural skincare therapist works much deeper than this thin physical layer of skin.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because, the brands that you're referring to, like Dr. Haushka, Weleda, they are, what some would consider the foundational brands in terms of naturals, biodynamics. they were some of the first natural brands on the market to be readily available.
The slight irony is that neither of them is certified biodynamic. So although there is biodynamic ingredients in them, they actually haven't certified biodynamic. They're not even certified organic. But Martina Gebhardt, which is the brand I'm working with now, is actually certified biodynamic. And it's just so exciting to use a product which is like the commitment to caring is so complete and the reluctance to compromise is so strong.
Yeah, I had the privilege of being able to have a facial with the Martina Gebhardt products, and I can say it was truly wonderful. And they were included in some of the goodie bags at our conference, so our students have also been able, had a chance to look at the philosophy and to sample some of the products. So I'll be looking forward to chatting to people who use them because, of course, Weleda Jane Sterland came in and gave a passionate speech at our 2017 conference about ingredients and, choosing the best and using the best and creating powerful, vital products that assist the skin in its processes. But
no, well, you did mention foundational, and I think it's worth saying, what is it about these products which allows them to change a sector, to create something new and to really define the sector in a new way? And I think it's because they put quality before profit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that came across in Jane's talk is that you absolutely cannot compromise on quality. That had to be the driving ethos, choosing the best, making the best, most vital products, and then obviously running it as a business as well, because ultimately it is a business that has to make profit.
I've got funny connections. Rudolf Hauschka was a personal friend of my grandfather. And so I kind of know where that company is coming from quite strongly. And it actually banned marketing. It was actually anti-marketing for decades. Obviously, the company nowadays is run by the fourth generation of leadership, and it's actually quite different from those founding principles. And I think I can feel that difference. But Martina Gebhardt is actually run by Martina Gebhardt still. And she is a savvy businesswoman, but she is no compromise in terms of quality and the pursuit of her goal of helping people. So it's fun to be in this environment where actually the most important thing is the effect you have and the support you give to people.
Yeah, and I think it's probably an interesting theme across the natural and organic sector, and obviously, green beauty movement, if you wish, which incorporates biodynamics as well, is that there are so many people, and I know this from the people that I speak to and the people that talk at our conference, is that one of the main goals has been to care for people, to look at issues that people were facing and to try and help them solve that. And I find that a very inspiring concept, especially when that is guiding your business practice. I had a conversation with a gentleman called Jem from Naissance, who's an ingredient supplier, and he was saying the same ethos guides his business. So just moving on slightly, because I suppose we could talk about this for ages. I think one of the main points that people might ask about biodynamics, or one of the main things they might get confused about, is what is the difference between biodynamic farming and organic farming?
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a very good question. And I'll sort of answer that in overview and then with a little bit more detail. So basically, biodynamic is organic. So straight out of the tin, a biodynamic product is an organic product. Biodynamic has got things that are extra to organic. So sometimes called organic plus. In terms of the method and the approach that the grower is taking, rather than the standards that are set down in law, they can be very, very similar indeed. And actually, they can also be very, very different. So I think within the sort of realm of biodynamics, you'll find a consistency of approach, which in the realm of organics, you actually probably won't find. You'll find that some growers in the organic sector are actually virtually biodynamic in their approach, but many are really quite far away from that. And so it is all to do with this consciousness and this commitment to caring, this commitment to make a relationship with your place, your land, with the animals, the microbiology and the biology of your place and the plants, and our relationship, which is evolving. So you form a relationship with your place, you work out how you work out what you understand of that place. You come to a feeling of it, a sensitivity. But a good biodynamic grower, a good organic grower, a good conventional grower has a common set of skills and knowledge, which, no matter what your consciousness is, if you don't have those skills, you're going to be a bad grower. So we're talking about a competent practitioner being able to work with an approach which lifts them to another level. So basically, in specific detail, the biodynamic grower is going to do things differently. They're going to experience their farm as a place with an identity, and they're going to consciously relate to that identity. So they've got an internal dialogue almost with their place. So they don't hear the voice of the place as a separate thing to themselves, but they form a sense of that place in their consciousness, which they then relate to. You could describe this as a meditative conversation with the place. So I've taken people on a tour of a biodynamic farm and highlighted, different fields, different areas of fields, how it feels different and what the place feels like. And they've been quite mystified. And then I've said to them, well, do you do yoga? Yes, they do yoga. I said, well, do you do the yoga outside? No, I do it inside. Okay, I said, just imagine like we're standing here under this tree, go to this place that you go to when you do yoga and sense this place where we are now under this tree. I said, okay. So they did that. And we go across the field boundary into the next field. And I said, now do it here. And they do it there. And they say, oh, wow, that's amazing. These two fields are completely different. And the farm as a whole is completely different as well compared to the next farm or a farm in another valley or in another location. So this sensitivity to place is the first thing. And then there's various specific things that are done. So the first thing to mention is that cow manure is used and silica, ground quartz crystals are used to make natural sprays that are used on the fields. And when you use these sprays, you change the relationship of the plant to water and warmth. So with the cow manure spray, you stimulate the plant's capacity to obtain water. Whether that will be, for instance, stronger roots that go deeper down or precipitation of dew, it depends, on the situation. Biodynamic farms in Australia have been investigated where they've turned the desert green, and the mystery of where those green farms obtained their water was solved by realizing that they actually get all their water from dew. So this spray changes the relationship of the plants to water in that context and allows the plants to be more resourceful in obtaining water. And the silica spray has the same mediating influence in the plant's relationship with warmth. For instance, if it's a damp summer, then this spray can bring the plants on in their progress towards forming seeds. For instance, wheat will struggle to ripen in a damp and cold summer, so you can use the silica to push them on. And later in the year, when the fungus starts forming and the autumnal decay forces arrive at the farm, then the silica spray can resist that for a period of time. So those are the two field sprays, and they're used in a specific way. They're made in a specific way by the grower at their farm. And then the third difference really is about the compost. A normal organic farmer will probably use farmyard manure, might use it direct on the fields, might obtain manure from other sources, might compost it, might not. If he's composting it, he might compost it fast, rotating it many times. The approach to compost is very specific when you turn to biodynamics. We always process the manure through a compost heap. We never put it direct on the fields. And we add herbal preparations to our compost. And these preparations are made from yarrow, chamomile, nettle, oak bark, dandelion, and valerian. They're the normal weeds of a farm. And they sort of have different relationships to the chemical nutrients of the compost, like nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, and so on and so forth. So these different plant ingredients are going to transform the microbiology in the compost so that the compost ends up more fertile. That's a useful device for making more fertility available, but also the way we make the compost heap is different. So we don't turn it. So it's kept as it's made, and it goes through a journey. So if you open a compost heap up at different ages, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, you find completely different biology living in it. An organic farmer will probably use the compost when it's finished, and all of the sort of large scale biology like worms and so on have moved out. That's like you see the compost in bags when you go to the garden centre. But a biodynamic compost heap will be spread before it's finished, and the biology will be still active in it, and that biology will be spread on the field as well as the compost. And that is inoculating the field directly with life. So it's that life system that's transforming the mineral ingredients of the soil into plant accessible food and human accessible food through the plants. So that's absolutely crucial. We're always focused on life.
Yeah, so it's like self-care for plants, you know, like...
It's like resourcing the plants with what they need to be strong and healthy and vital. And it's working with all that you have on that farm instead of bringing stuff in from outside. So biodynamics is also a permaculture system, in case anybody knows about permaculture.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few people in the community and be listening to this that know and understand about permaculture, or certainly are wanting to embrace permaculture standards into growing ingredients. Because I know there's a lot of people who grow their own ingredients, who, you know, there's a whole wealth of people that want to grow and make their own skincare. So I think that would be quite an interesting thing for them. Sorry, and I said sorry that you were going to move on to the final thing.
Yeah, well, basically the last part of this biodynamic approach is the bit that's kind of most famous, although most growers would say it's the least important. And this is to work very consciously with the natural rhythms and forces of the natural world, which are sort of earth, water, air, and fire, as expressed through plant roots, leaves, flowers, and seeds. So earth being roots, water being leaves, air being flowers, fire being seeds. And every day has a different vibe. When I'm giving talks about this, I usually talk about bad hair days. When we wake up in the morning, we actually don't know what sort of mood we're going to be in. We don't know what sort of a day our hair is going to have, whether it'll be behaving itself or whether it'll be taking its own path. This interaction with the naturalness of our being, which, you know, is slightly mysterious. And this natural predisposition, if you like, to being rooty, leafy, flowery, or seedy, you know, it's changing all the time. And if you disturb the soil around the plants on a particular day, you'll send a pulse through the soil into the plants of whatever the vibe is. So if it's a root day, you'll send a pulse that supports the development of the roots. If it's a leaf day, you'll send a pulse that develops the formation of the leaves. So if you're growing carrots, you work with the carrot seed on a root day. Maybe you plant on a root day, you hoe on a root day. If you're working with cabbages, you want the leaf, so you're going to do the same but on a leaf day. And if you're working, say, with peas or beans, wheat, you're looking at the seeds, so you're going to work on the seed days. Cauliflower is a flower, so you work with the flower day. The thing is, how do we know which day is which? It was worked out, believe it or not, by planting radishes every hour for a year.
Okay.
And then looking to see how the radish developed. And there's a discernible pattern. And it turns out it maps onto where the moon is on the ecliptic. So the ecliptic, the horizon of the sky, is divided into constellations, which is where the zodiac names come from. The actual zodiac we use for our birth signs is completely different from where the stars are actually today. Our birth charts all worked out on where the stars were around the time of birth of Christ, believe it or not. And the stars have all changed their positions now, but the planting by the moon happens according to where the moon is on the actual ecliptic, and each of the sort of constellations maps onto a different element: earth, air, fire, and water. So they can work out for the coming year what day will be what by looking at those patterns, and they can test it, and they have discerned this pattern from planting trials. So if you've ever tried biodynamic wine, you'll know that there's something in this. I heard a few years ago Marks & Spencer's and Tesco's were running wine tasting days on fruit days, because when you open the wine on a fruit day, it comes out fruitier, and they sold more wine, 20% more.
Oh, wow.
I know, isn't it? So, yeah, a little bit of mercenary behaviour there. That's just how it is. So if you want to buy biodynamic, you need to know that biodynamic produce is labelled Demeter.
Demeter, yeah.
Which is the only fully global organic standard. Okay, so you can see it on food, but you also see it on cosmetics ingredients. So if you want to find ingredients, then this, I suppose, will be in the background on your web resources, but it's database.demeter.net/welcome. And if you want to know more about biodynamics in the UK, it's biodynamic.org.uk. And if you want to get certified, either as a producer or a processor, so if you're a producer, then you're growing ingredients, and if you're a processor, then you're making products, then it's bdcertification.org.uk.
Do you think the biodynamic movement is growing?
Yes. Well,
across the world?
Across the world, yes, definitely. And the biodynamic movement is a little, in the UK, I'd say, it's a little bit worried about being sort of like tarnished by commercialism. It's scared of growing. It thinks that it won't be itself anymore. I actually strongly believe that biodynamics needs to be taken up by more and more people and shared. It supports better health. So it's just for everyone, and we need to get on with it. But yeah, as you approach biodynamics, you may find that some people are a bit zealous. Take it all with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
Take up, your own path into this. Work it out for yourself and have the courage of your convictions. Do what you believe in. Okay, talk to people, find out what they have to say, but there's no gods out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, as people investigate ingredients more, and especially within the cosmetics industry now, like, whether we consider the natural and organic or the green beauty movement or the mainstream industry, there is a understanding that some practices have to change, especially in terms of the environmental impact. And obviously biodynamics incorporates quite a lot of, desirable qualities in terms of, like you say, you're using what's on the farm, you're not having to bring what's in, you're using the land to work itself in a way, so you're just facilitating the system. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it, more and more people becoming more and more interested in it and the benefits. I guess if you look at the global movement in terms of sustainability and people trying to have more of a connection, not just with themselves, but with the land. I mean, we used to talk about those in such vague concepts, and it was very much relegated to like, oh, this is just like a hippy dippy concept, but it's actually becoming far more mainstream. We see it with self-care. We see it with, a movement towards having increased connection. And people have talked about it for so long, in literature, people talked about it, for ages and ages, like ancient societies and, tribes and communities and civilizations practiced this sort of farming. And, you've got people that talk about it now, Guy Sing Watson from Riverford talks about connections with the land, Robert Macfarlane, the poet, talks about connections with the land. You've got so many, George Monbiot, they're talking about it more on a much more kind of mainstream level. So perhaps it won't be seen as, I think, what you were trying to say, some people are kind of zealous and, it kind of gets tarnished with some unhelpful, stereotypes, if you wish.
You can end up in a compost workshop being told what to believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's very off-putting, actually, because the guy doing the compost, he's really passionate about it. And he kind of wants you to be as passionate as him, but you're just on your journey towards it. So don't worry about that.
I mean, the same thing happens to a certain extent with veganism as well, and some other movements where people become so, passionate about it and obviously care a lot, but unfortunately come across as, pushy and sometimes slightly zealous in their manner too. And all they're trying to do is, explain to you why they feel so passionate. But sometimes, like you say, you're on your own journey, you're going to come to it at your own time. And those things might be off-putting to people, I guess.
You see, it's all about you. Life these days is about us as human beings taking up, our destiny in our own hands and not kind of doing what we were told to do. So although this biodynamic sort of approach is incredibly open to nature, so that it looks quite like practices and traditions of, earlier millennia, it is actually quite different in that in those earlier times, the farmers just did what they were taught. Right? It was handed on historical knowledge. Now, we went in the 20th century through the Green Revolution and took a scientific chemical approach rather than a scientific life approach. We took this chemical approach orientated towards the mechanical, chemical transformation of the plant into food, and it generates quite a lot of issues. It creates sustainability issues and health issues, health for the environment, health for human beings. If we want to, in the face of these challenges, we can, in our own freedom, take up biodynamic approach, which in a way is anchoring us to something older and more traditional. but is very much out of the future, looking to create a different conscious relationship with place, with client, out of new understanding that you have developed in yourself. It is an empowered path.
Yeah. I mean, talking just to cover the next point that I wanted to ask you, I mean, we talked a lot about biodynamic farming and producing the ingredients, but does biodynamic extend beyond the farm? Like, does it impact the factory?
Yes. Well, basically, of course.
Okay.
I think you can hear that in everything I said. Yeah. I mean, it's about a different consciousness, about committing to caring, about including feelings, and basically also, the human spirit, the spirit of nature, just getting into this deeper connection. And the biodynamic approach, when taken up in organizational life, orientates towards the human being instead of the plants. And when you start looking at the human being, there's 3 principles. So in terms of the human soul, there's 3 things going on, 3 forces at work: thinking, feeling, and will. So, our soul life is made up of these 3 systems, all impacting at the same time, all interacting with each other. None is actually dominant. So we might think that our thinking is in charge, but often we do what we feel. We might think that our feeling is the most important thing, but sometimes our gut takes over and we just do something out of our deepest gut instinct. So there's these 3 systems. I suppose human psychology is interested in these, but if you like, the biodynamic approach to organizational life, which isn't called biodynamic, of course, is focused on these 3 qualities of the human being and these 3 soul capacities. And when you look at organizational life, I suppose there's 3 principles coming out of these 3 capabilities. The first is that everyone is on their own path of individual growth and development. The second thing is fairness, real and experienced, is necessary if people are to be truly themselves at work. And the third is all of the work that we do is done together and it's done for someone else. So we don't work for ourselves. Actually, we work for our customers. And the whole purpose of everything we do, the task that we're engaged in, is the fulfillment of our customers' desire. So in the place of work, we are on our own journey of inner growth and development. And we do need to feel that we're fairly treated so that we can be fully alive in our place of work. The actual task that we're doing is meeting the needs of someone else. So the whole economic system actually is about service. And I think sort of like our free market capitalism got the thing turned on its head, because basically the world of the economy is the world of brotherhood. So these good organizational life recognizes these 3 principles and arranges decision-making and routines and reviews in such a way that these principles are honored. And that basically creates an ethical business.
So are you talking about, like, when you talk about these principles, you mean this goes right from, obviously you've explained the system of growing, but this goes right from like harvesting through to the end product. So all of these... Yeah. So if we're talking about someone like Martina Gebhardt, for instance, the brand that you're working with now, the ingredients that are sourced are biodynamic, but then the harvesting and the production and everything, she's embodied those principles.
That's right. And there's no particular standards for that, but there's a sort of ethos that you get when you go to the place and you can feel that it's happening. It'll be in the processing of the ingredients. It'll be in the manufacturing of the products. It will be in the sales and marketing. It'll be in the warehousing. It'll be in all of the systems that there's this commitment to treating people fairly, that everybody is on their own journey of self-development and that everything we're doing is for someone else.
Yeah. I mean, those are concepts that I think a lot of us would like to embody in business. And they're also concepts that people, I find, are talking about more and more. Like even people, influencers in our kind of digital sphere are talking about, when you're trying to find your passion, ask how you can serve.
Yes.
It used to be, again, a concept that was relegated to, about that stuff. But when you unpick service a lot more, like you say, you find it in kind of every level of life. So it's interesting that, it's thought of as a core concept that from which some of these businesses are operating. Like, what are we serving? And that's built into every level, from the farming right through to the kind of sales and marketing. The whole business is structured.
It's just honoring the reality of what it is to be human. As a designer, I've helped to design organizational structures and meta-organizational structures so that we can work in a system that's compatible with what it is to be human. I suppose I'd say to anybody going into business, it's worth embedding these values from the off, because they actually foster success. Once you've got the ball rolling, starting any business is hard, but once you've got the ball rolling, it's a much easier company to manage because the people in it are much more autonomous. So you have much less burden managing them because they actually manage themselves. So when you embed these principles, now, obviously I do work as a consultant in organizations to support them to get there, but we do need to look at our own psychology. As a leader, we need to see how we're tripping ourselves up and how we're preventing us living out these values through our own hidden fears and hidden anxieties. But essentially, these principles they were embodied in a number of companies that have very long and illustrious stories. For instance, Weleda. I mean, obviously, it goes beyond the actual products as well. Of course, it goes into the use of the products, and the skincare industry has this amazing resource of skincare practitioners, and we work with them as much as we can, because you can take these principles of the human being and of this connection to nature and this connection to each other, you can take them into the work of the therapist, into the work of the skincare practitioner. And we run at Live Skin and the Soul Within courses.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
Our next course is a conscious connecting course, which is the foundational course for any holistic practitioner, body care, face care, anybody who's working with their hands and a client. It's basically a way of opening the eyes of the practitioner to actually what they already know and how important it is. So as you're working with a client, you yourself are being transformed by that work with the client. You are connecting to your deeper resources through the need of the client in front of you. And so it's a journey for you, but it's also a journey for the client and becoming aware of that journey. And you actually experienced this, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I had the benefit of experiencing one of these amazing facials. I mean, it was a process, really. No, process is the wrong word, an experience, because, you started off with the feet, and I'd never had anything like that before. And it was incredibly relaxing, and it enabled me to, just relax into what was going to happen. And, this wonderful experience of having your feet kind of cared for, and then moving on to having your face and, neck area kind of wonderfully taken care of as well, with products that, the therapist chose because she had a feel to choose in that moment.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a wonderful experience. And
as a practitioner, you will be changing what you do and what products you use. And as a client, you'll not have any idea that's going on. But you'll be profoundly supported and impacted by those choices. And so being aware of how you make these choices as a therapist can support you in making better choices. That's conscious connecting. So you're connecting consciously with the client with the product, you with the product, and your deeper resources.
Yeah. No, but I think, therapists and practitioners play an incredibly important role in
getting a brand out there.
Yeah, getting a brand out there, first of all, obviously, because like we said, we are running businesses still.
Yeah.
We are. And I know that you appreciate.
We made a lot of money in our lives, but it was made without so much anxiety and effort because we got these principles lined up.
Yeah. And obviously therapists play an incredible role in getting products out there, connecting with the products themselves. And also so many people get into it because they do want to help people and want to provide support. And, even when you're just going in, like, a couple of weeks ago, I went in to get a facial somewhere, and, the connection that you have with the therapist and that ability to, go in and experience like a relaxation, or if you're upset, you want to just go in and have an experience, or you want to take care of yourself. And the therapist facilitates that for you. I think that, sometimes people are like, oh, beauty therapists, or, oh, it's superficial, but actually it's not at all. They're providing a service.
Yeah, it's a window to the soul.
Yeah, it's our largest organ. Yeah, it's our largest organ in our body. And yeah, so to be able to work consciously with your client, I think is a goal that most people have.
It's a golden goal, and that's what our course is all about. The next one is running from the 11th to the 13th of March, part 1, and part 2 from the 1st to the 3rd of April. And it's £450, but if you quote Formula Botanica, then £350. So there's £50 less than the early bird, which is £400.
Okay, now just depending on when this podcast goes out, it just depends on whether people will be able to take up that offer. But you run it throughout the year.
Yeah, we run it throughout the year. And also, not only do we have Conscious Connecting course, but we have extension courses, which we have occasionally, for instance, looking into biodynamics in more detail. And if you go to live.co.uk and sign up to the newsletter, then you'll get to hear about everything we're up to.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd highly recommend you do that, because what Sebastian and Elizabeth are doing is very interesting. And if you get a chance to experience a facial from Elizabeth, I must say it's transformative.
She works out of London.
She does work out of London. It's a lovely experience. And I'm going to include, obviously, all the details that Sebastian mentioned in the show notes to this episode, so you'll know where to find Liv. And we'll put the code in that Sebastian mentioned. If you quote Formula Botanica, you can get a discount. And they run these courses throughout the year, don't you, Sebastian?
Yeah, 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us and for sharing all your knowledge. I appreciate you spending time with us.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Sebastian and found it helpful and useful for yourself, for your business. As usual, if you have any comments or feedback, or you want to get in touch with us, you might have some questions, you can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Formula Botanica. You can also head over to formulabotanica.com, check out our sample class, check out our blog. And you can also join in the global green beauty conversation by joining our free Facebook group, the Skincare Entrepreneur Mastermind. Once again, thanks so much for listening and have a great day.